Bonjour! Je m'appelle Arsen Kashkashian. Je suis l'agitateur principal du Boulder Bookstore. We're going to Paris today. And one of my favorite things about Paris, which I'm actually not going to talk much about, but I have one, is a croissant. Mmm. You just watch while I eat my croissant. I'll wash it down with some cafe au lait. So why are we going to Paris today? What is going on? Well, I realized that I have read 3 new novels all set in Paris in the last couple months. And I actually loved all 3 of these books. They're wonderful in different ways. So we're going to talk about those books, and then I'm going to try to get you to go to Paris, because it's great to go to Paris in your mind, but it's even better to go to Paris in real life. So we're going to start with the Vernon Subutex series by Virginia Despentes, which I've probably butchered her name. I'm sorry, Miss Mademoiselle Sturts, my 9th grade French teacher. I did not do very well in French, if you haven't figured that out by now. So these are the 3 books. The 3rd one just came out. This is the completion. It's not going to be, Vernon Subutex 26, 20 years from now. So I love these books. They originally came out in France about 4 or 5 years ago. FSG's been putting them out one a year for the last couple of years. And it's really one big novel, even though you can read them individually. Vernon is a record store owner, and that's not a very good business. So it's getting better actually now, but at the time of these novels was not a very good business. So at the beginning of volume 1, he has basically become homeless. And the reason he's become homeless is his record store had gone under, he couldn't support himself with it anymore, and he was being supported by his rock star friend, a guy named Alex Bleach. And Alex has died, and there's nothing in his will or anything for Vernon. So Vernon can't even pay for his little apartment in Paris. And so the first book is a lot of Vernon going from couch to couch of his different friends sleeping around in Paris. And you get all the different Paris neighborhoods. And it's really kind of a view of all these different areas of Paris that are just kind of wonderful from the inside out. It's definitely not a tourist view of Paris. So by the end of the first volume, you find Vernon is completely homeless, down on his luck. The one thing he does amazingly well that people will pay him for and will come from miles to see is he is an incredible DJ. And so every now and then his friends organize some sort of party where he can DJ, and these become a big deal. Well, I don't want to give too much away, but in volumes 2 and 3 he becomes almost godlike for his ability to DJ, and his friends, when they realize that he is completely homeless, kind of rally to his cause, and he becomes something of almost like a guru. And in volume 3, which takes place against the backdrop of the terrorist attacks that happened in Paris 4 or 5 years ago, the Charlie Hebdo attack, and there was the attacks in the nightclubs, you really kind of see Paris on edge, and Paris in a way that we don't like to think of Paris, but that's the world Vernon's living in during this last book. Really fantastic books. The first one was a finalist for the Man Booker International Prize. In my opinion, should have won every prize available. Just think this series is amazing. For a lighter, more picturesque view of Paris, I would recommend Perestroika in Paris by Jane Smiley. Smiley's a great author. She's been around for years and years. So a lot of people know her for 1,000 Acres. This is a completely different book. This is a book. This is almost like a Disney movie for adults. This book. Perestroika is a horse, and the horse that can communicate and talk to all the other animals. And Perestroika, who runs steeplechase courses right outside of Paris, one day her stable's left open, and so she walks out and she ends up walking to the Eiffel Tower, and she sleeps in the park there. She's befriended by a dog, and they're befriended by a crow, and then there's the 2 ducks, and it's just kind of their adventures in Paris. And gradually some people start figuring out there's a horse living nearby them in Paris, and there's a young boy involved, and everybody's helping each other out. There's wonderful food. There's Eiffel Towers right there. And she spins it together so well. Like, it's not cheesy. It's really a fun read. I think anybody 12 and up can read this, so it's good for young adults too. fantastic book. Jane Smile is a wonderful, insightful reader, and to see her bring it to this kind of book is really fun. And then the final book of my trilogy that I read was The Committed. And this is the sequel to The Sympathizer. This is a hard look at Paris in the early 1980s. The narrator is from The Sympathizer. In The Sympathizer, he was a spy for the communists. But then he came to America at the end of the war, and then he went back to Vietnam with a bunch of people who were trying to destabilize the Vietnamese government after the war had ended from the South. He had infiltrated this group. But anyway, he ends up in re-education camp, and then finally after re-education camp, he ends up in Paris, where it's the home of the colonizers. And in this book, this narrator is so interesting and so brilliant. He calls himself a man of two minds. There's always the piece of him that's acting and the piece that's watching. And, you know, he has had to be undercover for so much of his life. And that's kind of why he ended up in a re-education camp. That, yes, he had done a great job as a spy, but he had absorbed so much of the American culture and the capitalist culture that they felt he needed to be re-educated. And The Sympathizer, that first book, is really a confession of that he writes while he's in re-education camp. This book finds him in Paris. He becomes a drug dealer. He becomes kind of a gangster. The only Eiffel Tower you see is way in the background. It is mentioned a few times, but they're not up close to the Eiffel Tower. This is the people. This is the dispossessed people trying to get back and trying to get a toehold. And it's really interesting. He talks about some of the Vietnamese people who really are kind of have embraced French culture as much as they can, even though they'll never really be considered French. And then others who, you know, find the culture of the West somewhat abhorrent. And then every gradation in between. This is if you really want to get a view of kind of this Parisian world, this Vietnamese world, the post-Vietnam War world. This is a great, great book. This is such a smart book. Really, really made me think. But now that I've done all that thinking, I thought, gosh, I'd love to plan a trip to Paris and look at all these great books we have here at the Boulder Bookstore. And I'm sure Julia will show you a beautiful shot of our travel section. So this is Secret Paris. This is all the kind of places you might not realize on a normal trip. So maybe if you've been to Paris a time or two, this would be a great book to take with you. Then we have several just regular kind of guides to Paris. So the Lonely Planet Guide, the National Geographic Guide. You know, and I find guidebooks are still indispensable. I mean, sure, you can try to find this or that on your app, but you're never going to get an overview of an area you're going as well through apps or on the computer as you are from a guidebook, which you can flip through, kind of figure out what parts of the city you want to go to. There's the Eiffel Tower. That's the National Geographic Eiffel Tower. I wonder if the Eiffel Tower looks different for Lonely Planet. But anyway, Rick Steves, you know, if you go into a church somewhere, Rick Steves will have 6 pages detailing every aspect of the church, so you don't have to try to get their little guide. And finally, Paris Walks, because Paris is one of the great, great walking cities of the world. And it's just wonderful to walk. Here's a walk that starts at the Eiffel Tower and ends at the Champs-Élysées. And so I hope everybody gets a chance someday to go to Paris, see what it's about. But if you can't, for now, read one of these wonderful books. So much great literature coming out and focused on Paris. It's incredible. Now I'm going to go back to my croissant and my café au lait, which is getting cold. Au revoir.